Hi, class. Let's start the chapter. This chapter, we'll be talking about organizing the business enterprise. And so our learning objective is we need to discuss the element that influence a firm's organization structure. What causing change or adjust the organization structure. We also need to explain how specialization and departmentalization are the building blocks of organizational structure. Further, we're going to distinguish between responsibility and authority and explain the differences in decision making in centralized and decentralized organization, because we heard a lot about centralized and decentralized. We want to know what's the difference between them. We're also going to explain the difference between functional, divisional, project, and international organization structures and describe the most popular forms of organizational design these days, and also understand how the informal organization is different from formal organization. So, organizational structure is a specification of the job to be done and how they are related. So each organization, whether a profit, nonprofit, government, NGOs, which is nonprofit ones, they belong not for the government, must develop a structure that meets its specific needs. Determine of organizational structures. First of all, we spoke earlier about the strategy, what's the purpose, and what's the mission of the organization. These are supposed to be clear for any organization. We also need to know the size, the technologies used, and the changes in the environment also. It may be carefully planned and developed as an organization evolves. Now, we heard of chain of command, which is about the organizational chart shows employees' position and the flow of decision-making power. And if you see here, for example, you would see kind of a board of director, and then the president, and where we have different VP or vice president, which is they might be calling VP, CTO, or C-level, which is Vice President of Finance. And under that, maybe there is what you call a payroll manager, an accounting manager, and then VP for sales or Vice President sales. And you find the national sales managers, and then you have what you call a different district sales managers. And then what you got is the VP for production, and there's a purchasing manager, plant manager, VP for a human resource, or C-level, a human resource, like a chief. When we say C, it means C-level means chief. And then you have VP marketing, vice president of marketing, or chief marketing. So these are levels, and each one has its own under them, probably some kind of a management, and then comes in for the employees. So these are kind of the organizational structure. Now, we have something called specialization, which is a process of identifying the specific job that it need to be done and designating the people who will perform that. So we specify what kind of a job needs to be done and who's supposed to do it. But then we have something called departmentalization or department, or making things into department. It's determining how tasks should be grouped together to make the workplace more efficient. As you see in the picture, each department probably is in charge of doing certain work. Now, this is what you call specialization and growth. Usually, small company has fewer employees and less specialization, or they are multi-skills. So they're not specialized in certain things, might be specialized in a few things. The larger the company, the large companies become more efficient through specialization, and you have each person might be doing one type of task. Now, as you see in the old days, in the Walt Disney, he was doing everything, including, drafting these things. Once the Walt Disney grew and became big, there were people specialized in a different departments, especially in animations. There is a people who their job is doing animation. In the old days, when he had a small company, he probably did it all. Now, in the departmentalization, it is a grouping jobs into a logic unit. And the reason you do that, because you want to increase efficiencies, and you do it through a divisions of labors. You might want to also have, with this, it comes in the better control and coordinations. It's more easily monitored, when it's easily monitor the performance, and it's a profit center are accountable also. And we'll explain each one of them. Now, you see, once you go in a Walmart or any department store, you will see clothing according for the men's section, children's section, female sections, and each one is a different in a different department. Now, the base of departmentalization could be a functional, customer, product, geographic, and process. As you see here as example of firm using multiple form of departmentalization, we have, according to the functional departmentalization, we have the geographical one, and we have the product. So as a functional, probably you will have a VP of finance, a VP of production, and a VP of marketing. Could be a VP of sales, and list goes on. That's according to the functional departmentalization. And then under that, you have what you call, could be a geographical, especially if the company has a multiple location. So we have probably one in Nova Scotia plant operating, one in Quebec, and one in Alberta. And after that, you will have, a similar consumer product, industrial product, under Quebec, consumer product, industrial product, and in Nova Scotia is done this way. I think now you went through the assignment of the assignment, and you were aware that these departmentalizations, it's happening, but it could be a geographical or it could be a functional reason. Now, you might have functional, and a VP of finance has access to the finance of these locations. Now, the decision-making hierarchies, how the decision-making hierarchies, it's need to be done because it defines who is responsible for making certain decision. And there is a 3 steps needs to be clear, is first assigning the task, performing the task, and then distributing the authority of it. So in the assigning the task is basically there is who is responsible and who is have the authority. And responsibility is due to perform assigned task. So this department is responsible to do the assigned task. And there is authority is done within that department, which is power to make a decision to complete a task. Now what we have, what you call the performing task. As we saw before, is assigning tasks, performing tasks, and then distributing authority. In the performing task, you do the delegation, assigning to of a task, responsibilities, or authority to do a subordinate. And then you have some kind of an accountability. Definitely you have attached an accountability for it because you want to see or ask who has the liability of subordinate to complete the delegated task. So these are the process for the performing task, and these are the process for assigning tasks. So you do assigning tasks, and then you do a performing task also. Now, as we spoke in the first the class, we said that there is kind of something called organizational, and they are some of them centralized and some of them decentralized, which is driven from centralization and decentralization. And distributing authorities is when it's the top manager reserve most of the decision maker right. That's called centralized or centralization. In the decentralization, the lower and the middle management level managers have some discretion to in making the decision on their own. Now, don't make a an error because there is some application that might help some decentralized organization. It's called DSS, but for the top managers, there is an application called ESS, which is we will talk about it also. DSS, Decision Support System. ESS is Executive Support System. What is the span of control? Is span of control, when you are a supervisor, it's about the number of subordinate that a manager is responsible for supervising. There might be a wide span and many, many subordinates, and there might be, if it's a specialized job, narrow span, very few subordinates. The more complicated the task require more supervision and a narrow span of control because it's a complicated and you cannot manage everybody because it needs to direct input from the supervisor most of the time. Now, we always see that when a manager do not properly delegate tasks to subordinate, or there's when there are a disagreement about how much authority should be delegated, both manager and workers become frustrated. They want more delegation. He wants to run everything, and that both sides becomes kind of frustrated in that. Delegation might help in many cases, and centralizations might help in some cases. And for example, if we're looking at the law firm or a college or IT, we will see mostly, especially in the law firm, a flat organization, which is there is a wide delegation is happening. Yet on the contrary, in the army, you will see no, you will see there is a general, there is a colonel, the majors, and it's kind of a hierarchy, and there's not much delegation is happening there. Now, there is a three forms of authority. There's what you call a line authority, a staff authority, committee team authority, and the fourth one that probably is not part of the organization, but you probably need to build it up for yourself, is called informational authority. We will talk about that, how it can help you to, allocate, for example, a job with the informational authority that you can build. We'll talk about that too. Now, in the line of authority, a direct chain of command indicated by a solid line in the organization chart. So direct chain of command is kind of called a line of authority. A staff authority, it's when a staff that advise, support the line manager, like, the HR, the financials, these are kind of a staff authority. I also, I heard or saw it in some literature, front end and back end, but it's actually back end stand for a staff authority. Line authority is the ones who probably deliver. That's a different literature, but here you're going to look at a line authority. It is a direct chain of command, and a staff authority is a staff that advise, support line manager, which is called support staff. Now, to make it clear for you, let's say there is a clerk equipment, and then you have the staff managers, which could be the engineers department, engineering department, and the human resource department, because they don't contribute directly. And then you have the line managers, which is made of truck division, fork and small earth movers division, and tool division. And these are three different things. And under, for example, here, the forks and small earthquake division, you have the painting, you have the assembly, sales, distribution, fabrication, material handling, and purchasing. IKEO will explain about this company, how they are operating in this way. Now, the committee and the team authority. Authority granted to committees, work teams, um, permanently or temporary. So there is what you call a steering a committee. There is a committee. There is a work teams. They have some authority that is done in a permanent style or in temporary. Plan their work and complete the task independently. If you notice here that the business firms are increasingly using the team and allowing group of employees to plan and organize their own work within a minimum supervision. This contributes to employee empowerment. And when we do a group assignment, hoping we can, matching the outside market also. There is what you call functional structures. So because we spoke about it, it's a unit are formed based on the job function. For example, a group of payroll, somebody, a part of the company will do a payroll. So according their functions, a payroll or the accounting or the national sales, according to the function that they are doing. And you look at it, for example, here, what do you have? You have the board of directors, the president, and the VP for accounting, for finance, which is under them is the payroll manager and the accounting manager and the employees there. And then you have the vice president for sales and national sales manager. And then you have every district a sales person. So then when you have something called the divisional structure, and the divisions operating as semi-autonomous units and a profit center. For example, it could be the division of products, certain product like makeup or perfume or cars, whatever, is according to the product that they produce, or customers or geographic, like the branch in Canada for it and a branch in US company. And they're also affecting the application that they might use in the organization, whether centralized, decentralized, driven, or non-driven. Now, the basic organization, you have what you call chief executive officer, which is that's part of the C-level, or the president. It could be a president or chief executive officers. And then you have under them the VP for consumers. We said according to the products or the customers or the geographic. And then you have the VP for consumers product. Then you have for the industrial product and health product. And each one has its own department and operating and finance. The same thing, it's happening. Or it's a different, might be different. And lots of multinational, multi-production companies in the world, they act in that sense. Probably a good example, Canadian Tire have two operations, one are running the Canadian Tire and one is running the credit card and the finance. And so like a bank, operates like a bank. And you can get the MasterCard of Canadian Tire. Now, there is other things that you would see it when you're joining company is a project organization, and it's used by organization with a new product opportunities or for specialized product, especially in the oil operation. When they go and explore oil, they are used in that sense. And it works even in the IT service providers like IBM, like ITS. They work in a matrix organization. The project manager and the regular line managers share the authority until the project is completed. Lots of it also done in the construction. And as you see here, the project, for example, the project organization structure is very useful in the construction project, like the hydraulic generation station on La Grande River in Quebec. And the construction of the installation like this has a specific beginning and ending point. Once completed, the generating station become part of the traditional organization structures of provincial utilities. Anyway, let's see, in a project, usually these days they use a lots of a matrix approach, not a pure project, it's called a matrix project. And if you look at here, let's look at the person who's in charge of cooking, for example, or a group of cooking. In the same time, he is working within the magazines, works with the books, works with the internet, radio and newspaper, and network cable. And in each position is differently done. If we look at, for example, home, it has done according to the position he is in. So it might be internet and a home. So that's what you call a matrix approach. That's a lot is done in the, once again, IT companies and also hospitals and the legal department. Usually the professional, high-end professionals organization do a lot of matrix organization. They are, especially the ones into the high-end services. Now, there is something which is we all been, what do you call international organization, which is designed to help a company succeed in the international market. Most of the companies operating, big companies operating in Canada, some kind of an international company. International departments and division integrate global organization. Now, there is a different approach when it comes to uh, uh, the IT solution, and we can bring an example of the CRM for Ford versus the CRM for BMW. They have a different approach for their CRM, and because it's meeting the way they operate internationally. Now, um, so the chief executive officer, he is the manager or the superior for the retail division, say A, retail division B, and the international division. And under the international division, you might have the Asia, Europe, and Latin America and Africa, for example. There are different divisions. And we see that, for example, for many large companies. And probably what's been happening is there is organizational design are changing for the 21st centuries. And these type are kind of a boundaryless or boundary net organization because the telecommunication and collaboration tools, it's a team organization. It could be a virtual and you don't own anything, and could be a learning organization. And as example of virtual organization, you might have the core organization and the rest in the Asia. You contracted manufacturing in Asia, and you also contracted your administrative in services. You can contract it as sales and marketing, distribution, and logistics. So that could be also done in a way, can be very useful. Probably what you call, there is something called transactional theories, who utilize, believes in such an approach for the system. Now, there is, what we said, there is a formal organization and there is informal organization. Informal organization, it's the network of social interaction and relationship among employees unrelated to a formal structure. It is a powerful source that can alter the formal structures, informal group, organization agreement. These are two kinds. And in the informal group is a group of individuals who decide to interact among themselves, even though they are not required to do so. And probably you are interacting now with other classes that is not required for you to do that. And it's about, you may work together or not, may discuss business of other interest, or may not have a positive impact on the business. And that's need to be monitored by the management if you might have, these informal group might have some kind of a negative impact on the business, such as a rumor groups or gossip groups, sometimes they call it. And the gossip group is could be a very negative. Now, the grapevine organizational is an informal communication network that carry gossip and other information. In this case, manager must maintain open channel of communication and respond to inaccurate information to minimize these damages. And manager can use it to measure employee reaction also, gain information and improve the decision. So it could be a tool that dangerous for the organization and could be also beneficial in a way. Let's do a quick check in the end of the chapter. So the organizational chart illustrates which one? Position of seniority within an organization, only those reporting relationship between middle management and top management. C is organizational structure, employees, titles, and their relationship to one another, or operational plan. Which one you think the organizational chart illustrate? Your answer? It's C. Organization structure, employee titles, and their relationship to one another. The next question, specializations permit higher level of productivities through the efficiency gain. However, a potential risk of excessive specialization could be a higher training cost, employee boredom, bored, dissatisfaction and isolation, higher wage rate and to compensate the poor working conditions, or excessive product defects. Which one? The answer you think? The answer is B. There might be bored, dissatisfied, and isolation. And we saw that in lots of some car manufacturing if you don't switch their job. Now, a company that emphasize superior customer service need to respond quickly to satisfy customers. They are likely using what? Line of authority, centralized decision-making, decentralized decision-making, or functional authority. And why? Decentralized decision-making. We'll explain why that. Let's assume this case says beta engineering use the what corporate structure where the teams of specialized from various function area work together on a specific and report both to a project manager and line managers. What's your answer? There is a hint here. Matrix. Anytime you see that line manager and project manager work on a certain project, that's a matrix, and it's over whenever it's finished, due date. Okay, so the in what is an informal person-to-person means of communication, information, and or rumors, and we just said it in the last, right? That one. Okay, that's it. Thank you for your time. We'll continue.